UAPs, unidentified anomalous phenomena. Are they extraterrestrial, interdimensional, time travelers in origin, or are they simply a result of top-secret military black projects, false flag alien invasion psyop, drones, or other human-made aircraft? Join UFO historian Don Ecker, MUFON State Director for New York Chris Deperno, retired veteran pilot Commander Cobra, and well-esteemed host and researcher Martin Willis as they discuss the latest news and topics regarding UAPs with a no-holds-barred approach on UAP Crossfire.
Yay, you UAPers. Wait, that doesn't sound good. Mark, I was watching you with your glasses. All right, here we are, UAP Crossfire, and we have a excellent show for you today. Over this way, we have Chris Deperno.
The other way.
Is it going the other way? Is it really?
The other way.
Does it show that way? Oh, okay.
One of them is right.
So this way, right here, we have Don Ecker. And then we have special fill-in host, Marc Dantonio. And he's key to who we have this evening. We're joined by Darcy Weir, filmmaker. Yeah. Love the guy. Here he is.
There he is.
Darcy, welcome.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Glad to be here.
Good.
Sorry I'm late to the party.
We usually do this thing like how everybody's doing and all that. So we're going to include you this time in it, Darcy. We'll start with Chris. How's it going, Chris?
Oh, it's going great. Sun has actually come out in Buffalo. Sunshine has discovered Buffalo, New York. Great day today. You only had to wear a hoodie.
That's an improvement.
It was good.
It only discovered Buffalo because it forgot where it was. Wait till tomorrow.
No, he's an astronomer. He knows.
Ground zero for the eclipse. Buffalo is now known for the eclipse.
Yeah.
And
definitely right.
Yeah.
And snow.
And just, Chris, I'm going to say something probably kind of silly, but is Buffalo named after the animal?
Buffalo named after what?
The buffalo animal.
Buffalo.
It's not spelled differently.
No.
Well, for God's sake, you live there.
You live there, dude. Now you got to know. Now you have to know this stuff.
Chris, just say sure. Just say sure.
Absolutely. All right, Mark, how you doing?
I'm fine. We had some observatory maintenance out in the desert today. So Marianne, Rob, and Tara, the Eulis were out there. And I got another friend of mine who some of you may know, Jim Mann. He was with the Phoenix MUFON for many years, state director for MUFON for Arizona for a long time. Now Stacy Wright. And Jim replaced the power supply for us today. Tara and Marianne brought the PC to Jim to have it all changed out. And we just finished testing, literally, not kidding, 45 seconds before you went live. I was saying goodbye to them as they finished the last test with me.
Wow. And you made it.
It's been a kind of a long day, but it's good. Yeah. So
glad you're here. Glad you're here. And Don, from what I understand, the sun has found Southern California.
It has. It has been last 2 days absolutely beautiful. We've had a long, cloudy winter with an excessive amount of rain, but it's much better now. Although today, I got to tell you, getting up, doing my usual routine, I stumble out to the kitchen, get myself my first cup of coffee, that magic elixir that makes the rest of the day go smoother, and turn on my cell phone. And I had a text from a friend of mine that a guy that I have known for years, who is actually a Macintosh legend, and he was a very prominent figure in the UFO field for years. David Biedny had passed apparently unexpectedly the end of January. Now, normally, I would have thought this fellow, there would have been a lot of news about this. And the guy was, as a matter of fact, for a number of years, he had his own podcast called The Angry Human.
Oh, yes. I know who he is.
Okay.
I've actually talked to him before.
Right. The Angry Human. And at any rate, this was a guy that I knew. I've got a lot of stories about him, but this is not the time or place. But anyway, so I looked around and I couldn't believe that basically nobody knew about this. So I wrote him an obituary for my Dark Matters Radio fan page and up on my personal Facebook page. It's a short thing. It's not, I mean, it would have taken me all day to list all his accomplishments. But I got to tell you, guys, it's kind of spooky when people that you've known for years, boom, are suddenly gone.
Yeah.
And that's the story that we're all going to be looking at sooner or later.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's right. One
And
thing
it
you
was
can
months
never
ago,
escape.
That's the truth.
Yeah. Well, Darcy, how and who are you?
Well, that's great.
Yeah,
Martin.
Darcy,
how
who
am
the
I?
hell
Who
are
are
you?
you?
Who the hell are you?
Nancy, who are you?
Oh, I'm
Let's
just
get
a
into it.
Nice frame here.
just a crazy Canuck, you know, who's into UFOs.
That there guy, hey, he know what he's doing, eh?
Do I sound retarded?
No.
I hope not. Anyways, so yeah, I've been researching UFOs for the better part of like a decade, and producing
A youngster.
Yeah, you could call me spring chicken, I guess, compared to you guys. But I'm, documentarian. I've been focusing on the UFO and UAP side of things in terms of filmmaking. And I actually featured Mark in my recent doc.
That's right. Yeah.
Transmedium,
Yeah,
which
right.
has Tim Gallaudet, Marc Dantonio, Chris Stiles, who covered the Shag Harbor incident. Who else we got in there? Louis Borges. Got Richard Dolan. He's a name for sure. And
Tim's a rear admiral too, so that's actually
Yeah, Tim's a rear admiral.
that's really good.
yeah, he's a retired 2-star rear admiral, but chief oceanographer for the Navy for 7 years and served for them for 32 years. And yeah, we just covered like the whole USO stuff. Martin has been pretty awesome at connecting me with some new USO stories. I got to follow up with what's your guy's name?
Scott Cassell. He's
I
amazing.
I gotta meet up with him and interview him about that stuff and pour through his hard drives and see if we can get that USO footage, because if he has that, that'll be groundbreaking.
Yeah, I mean, he was the first one to film a giant squid in the wild as well. He's an amazing adventurer. Darcy, would you like me to play the Transmedium Fastmovers trailer?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
All right, here it goes, everybody.
Darcy Weir is an independent researcher and filmmaker who has traveled around the world to study the UFO phenomenon.
Back in August of 2020, under a shroud of secrecy, the UAP task force was clandestinely brought into existence within the shadows of the enigmatic U.S. Department of Defense. My questions regarding this phenomenon led me to American oceanographer and retired Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet.
How long did you serve for the Navy and work for NOAA?
I served in the Navy for 32 years, and I then worked for NOAA after that for about 3.5 years. They're coming from somewhere. We don't know how they're doing what they're doing, and we don't know their intentions. So all I can say is this deserves a significant amount of study of our oceans, and that's what I'm pursuing right now.
When you hear about Navy submarine seamen witnessing or noticing on sonar USO activity, objects that are moving, 300 knots plus.
I won't use the gentleman's name, even though he's mentioned it publicly and has been in print, that during some testing in on the Los Angeles class improved 688, Los Angeles class fast tug submarine, the USS Hampton, I think it's SSN 767. They were doing something new with the sonar, and an object was being picked up on sonar as a fast mover, and it went zipping by them. And the sonar operator said that went by us at in excess of 800 miles an hour.
Now, I heard through the grapevine that you had a experience with what some people call a fast mover in the Navy. Can you?
Yes, I can tell you about that.
And what are your thoughts on the USO situation? I mean, I film here nightly, and it's almost every night you catch something that you can't explain. Why do you think that the water is so important to these craft? What's it about our oceans that attract them to it?
Personally, I believe that they exist. They reside in our oceans. I believe that they have bases or underground facilities.
There is, in my view, based on the data of USO activity, there is a very good reason to believe that there are multiple undersea bases that these things operate at. Yes. Now, and some of them would be definitely off the coast of South America on the Atlantic side. I don't think there's any question in my mind. There's been too many of those types of cases. So you're talking about a global presence. What are they doing? What's going on?
Yeah, that was good. That was a great film. I watched that, Darcy.
I saw it too. You know, I skipped by my parts because that's kind of, you know,
redundant.
Yeah, you know.
Mark, we're going to have to get you to talk about I know that, the listeners of my show have heard it, almost every time I get you to tell the story, but somewhere along the line here, we're going to get you to tell the full story, especially, I think it's very interesting what happened afterwards in Washington, D.C. too, but we'll get to all that.
I think I covered that in your movie, Darcy, didn't I?
Yeah, you talked about sitting down with the second command for the Navy.
Yeah, with the one of the Joint Chiefs. Yeah, that was later. Yeah.
So how is this movie going, Darcy?
It's good. People are reviewing it, saying they really appreciate this mishmash of stories and the testimony and. Trying to keep it as factual as possible when it comes to USOs. I'm still working on this stuff. I'm just trying to wrap on a follow-up to this with more.
Where is it available, Darcy?
It's available on Amazon Prime and Apple TV right now. It will be more available as the year goes on.
Also, Darcy, you're going to be a contact in the desert, aren't you?
We are.
Yeah, I'll be there too.
Be a good time, man.
Yeah.
Actually,
when you showing it?
When am I showing it? Sunday. People that want to come check out the film on the West Coast can come to Contact in the Desert, see it Sunday night at 6 p.m. And if they're in New York State or on the East Coast, they can come to Pine Bush, which I'm going to be there Saturday of the same weekend. So that's the 30th? That's May 30th, I think.
And are you also, I can't remember, Darcy, are you also going to be in
June 1st.
Shag Harbor?
June 1st. Sorry, it's June 1st.
Yeah. Shag Harbor, are you going there?
I'm going to UFO Expo in September. Yeah, and Chris Stiles is putting that on.
Right. So that's where I knew I was going to see you somewhere, and that's where it will be.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. That's going to be great. So we get like, the whole continent, east to west.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
that
I think that's cool.
Shelburne, is it Shelburne or, yeah, Shelburne Harbor? It gets confused with Shag Harbor, that event. And it was a whole separate situation. Chris Stiles broke that apart, luckily, because everyone was, putting them both together. And yeah, that's in this movie in particular as well.
So he recently released this book called Sweep Clear 5, and it's all
Right.
about. So when he was interviewing all of these witnesses to the Shag Harbor incident, he was finding testimony for a totally different incident that happened on the East Coast, but this was 7 years prior, so 1960. And he just kept digging, and he found out that this incident had many of the same factors: crash craft in the ocean, non-human biologics testimony, because the divers that went down into the ocean said they saw something in their report that didn't look human near the craft, and something
Dead?
that's like, what's that, Don?
Dead?
No, alive. And then when they came up from that diving mission, they ended up like through a Canadian version of a Freedom of Information Act request. Chris found that ship, which was part of like a NATO mission that went to recover this craft, they went on high alert and they declared DEFCON 1 when they came back. And in history, supposedly we've never gone to DEFCON 1.
That's
but
right.
He actually has the logs from the captain's logs from that ship, and he published that in Sweep Clear 5.
Darcy, wouldn't they have to have been fired upon to go to DEFCON 1?
That's the mystery about it, right? Like it's just what happened between the divers going down and DEFCON 1 being declared. That's the real mystery. And
well, a hostile act has to take place if you go to DEFCON 1.
It would have to be.
You just don't go to DEFCON 1 because you see something.
Yeah, it would have to be.
They have different layers.
It has to be some kind of threat, right? But
yeah,
supposedly he couldn't figure out what the threat was, other than maybe the divers were so spooked from what they saw. I don't know. So pretty interesting case. I'm looking forward to meeting Chris, and this whole how we talk about Men in Black? That's a pretty common phenomenon for experiencers of either UFOs or non-human intelligence, whichever has been witnessed. Well, in Canada, we have our own Men in Black. And I think my opinion is that Men in Black they're just agents from different 3-letter agencies. Like CIA you listen to John Callahan's testimony with the JAL Airlines incident with, that aircraft that was circling in the sky to evade UFOs. And
that's right. I remember that.
Basically the first UFO they saw was like a sun in the sky. It was so massive in the middle of the night, flying over to Anchorage, Alaska.
Right.
And then it emitted to UFOs that were like beaming the cabin with green light. Pilots were losing their minds. This gets reported to the FAA. John Callahan gets those reports. He's really intrigued. He's following up, doing his investigations as you would, doing your due diligence. They get a call the next week, and they're being rounded up, the whole team that's been exposed to this information, and to bring all their files. The CIA walks in and they confiscate everything. But John Callahan kept his documentation, and that's why we know about the case and know that it was a real case because he leaked that stuff through the Disclosure Project, Stephen Greer's Disclosure Project, right?
What was that photograph we just saw?
That was a Canada film, actually, of what they claimed were men in black.
Yeah, it was
Darcy,
security
have you seen
camera.
that before? Yeah.
Yeah, security camera footage from a hotel in Niagara Falls on the Canadian side.
I saw a photograph very similar to that emanated out of Las Vegas.
Yeah, so it's common, right? And for that case, for that video clip screenshot that you grabbed, essentially the story behind that was a hotel worker, I think somebody that worked at the front desk, like a bellhop or something like that. They had recorded a really prominent UFO just hovering over Niagara Falls the night before. And they had reported it to the police, and I guess they had the footage. And the next day, those two dudes showed up the hotel looking for him. And their friends took note that these guys looked weird. They were both like kind of identical twin looking, were very aggressive. They really wanted to see him, but he had called in sick because he literally had like a cold or something. Call it COVID, and he basically wasn't there to receive them, but it was a really creepy encounter, and they wanted to kind of shake him down, but couldn't. Maybe they got him at his house after. But yeah,
creepy.
But what I'm trying to say is that I think it's like different agency members intercepting at different levels. For John Callahan, the CIA came because they're a higher authority that the FAA would respond to. For a case like a civilian like us, we might get FBI, we might get Air Force OSI, or maybe somebody from the Air Force would get a visit from Air Force at OSI, right? So it's like
we would get for if it was if a naval vessel was involved, or if someone's seeing something in the ocean, it'd be NCIS, and then you'd get.
Well, I'd like to chime
the Joint Counterterrorism Task Force on top of that, and then the FBI would be third in that list.
So I'd like to chime in here if I could, because it's very relevant. Don, I was just telling you the story ahead of the show. I had a show this week with two Marines, one Mike Herrera and the other Jonathan Wagan. And Jonathan had his encounter in Peru. He saw something looked like this. Now, I just talked about this on an addendum that I just did on my show. So those people that have looked at that, I'm going to tell the same story again. And what happened was my producer, Donna, and I went to dinner, took Jonathan out to dinner. And, we were talking. I asked him if he got hassled, when he came back to the States from Peru after that encounter. And he said, well, in 1999, a couple of things happened. One of them was, now his grandmother had her PhD in JD. She had a law degree. So she was no dummy. And so she was at her house, and Jonathan was living with her. His car was in the driveway, but he rode with someone to work. And this car pulls in a Grand Marquis. There's a knock on the door. And this guy is standing on the step, and he's completely bald. He's got extremely pale skin, wearing sunglasses. Now, no one brought up the grandmother didn't bring up the word Men in Black, nothing like that. And almost someone identical sitting behind the wheel in the Grand Marquis. And he just says very robotically, I need to talk to Jonathan Wigan. And she says, I need to see some ID. She was no dummy, she puts him to task. So, and he just keeps repeating over and over again. And so his grandmother had no clue that he had a UFO encounter in Peru at all. So she thought he was in trouble with the law, and she was pissed at him. And he just kind of let the whole thing blow over and never told her about the UFO. And the creepy guys get out of the driveway, and then, a couple of weeks later, his car was totaled in the driveway, and a bumper was left there. Whoever smashed into his car was the way the driveway was, and I'll see if I can find the picture. He brought me right to where the house was. The way the driveway was, it's kind of a hidden driveway. I have a picture of it right here I'm bringing in. And so his car was sticking down too far, and the car came in and smashed right into it. He said it actually totaled his car, but his car, was kind of an older car or whatever. But whoever it was that plowed into him left the bumper, and on the bumper was a federal license plate. The police came. He filled out a police report. He has all that information that it's a federal car. He doesn't know what agency or whatever, but that's what smashed into his car in the driveway. Anyway, I think it's kind of funny. They never once mentioned, she never heard of Men in Black or anything like that. It's just some really, really weird guys. And what a story. And he wouldn't tell it during the show. I kept telling him, I shut off my mic and I said, "Hey, Jonathan, just tell that story. I got to hear that story." And he said, "Okay." And then when it came time to tell it, he was like a deer in the headlights. He couldn't do it. So,
Martin, did you say along with that fellow you had Herrera again also?
I had Mike Herrera for the first time. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
this is the guy that was a Marine.
Yes.
That encountered what he thought was entities putting bodies on a
well, that's
unidentified craft. This is what he thought. It's not.
No, he didn't think it was what he thought was. First of all, he thought it was. Here's a rendition of it.
Well, it's immaterial. The
Yeah.
fact is, we talked about this case several months ago.
That's right.
With
This
Commander
is kind of
Cobra,
what he saw. Yeah.
Chris Deperno, and myself, we all decided this guy was, well, let me just be blunt, full of shit. Okay.
Okay. Well,
leave it to Don.
All right.
I will say, Martin, I do have questions about Mike because of some of the stuff that you talked about. I have to listen to the podcast to be fair to him, but there was some stuff that was reported that didn't make sense.
Well, I know that, and I kind of I don't want to say I took him to task, but I did say to him during my show because he's like, yes, this is what he was told, and blah blah blah. So I said, do you have an idea that you might be being fed misinformation? Because doesn't that sound crazy? Of course, I mean, that would be a good way to get someone out there that's going to tell you a story that they saw something like this, and then, oh yeah, well, that guy's just crazy anyway.
Well, anybody that is active duty military on an op in the bush, okay, armed, expecting possible hostile contact, etc., ad nauseum, and a bunch of unknown dudes in black coveralls come up armed and demand your weapons, and they hand them over.
Well, they didn't hand them over. No, what they did is they slung them on their, but they had to sling them down, and then they never handed over their weapons.
Yeah, they took the magazines out, Martin.
That's right. They took the magazines out, threw them on the ground. You're right. Yep. This is what he told.
Chris, does that sound feasible to you?
Well, he said that the guns were aimed right at their head. Keep that in mind. I don't know if that would make a difference.
I've had guns aimed at my head, Martin, and I didn't give up my weapon.
Well, all right. Let me just say this. Okay. First of all, I'm not going to call him a liar, but I'm going to say I am suspicious of what he said, and I'll tell you the reasons why, Martin. And you can argue it, and I got to tell you, I got to listen to his whole thing. So you're a Marine on an op, and Don will back me up on this. You don't deviate from that op unless you get absolute permission. Okay, that's number one. His task was to secure a landing zone because they were bringing in stuff. You just don't go wandering off.
No, that's not what that was. Nope.
That's what he.
No. Why don't you take a listen to it, and then you can decide more.
What the op was then.
I don't know exactly what it was called, but what it was it was during the earthquake and all that, and there was some type of recovery that they were doing.
Remember the tsunami that came as a result of, like, I think the 2013 earthquake in Indonesia or something like that.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Right.
Yeah.
So they sent in some Marines to deal with that and help with the, citizens and protect the country and make sure there wasn't civil unrest and people killing each other and stuff.
But from what I understand, with that, they had a specific operation. Marines don't go out and say, hey, we're going to create our own ops. They're given a mission and a task mission, and they're given instructions. Plus, from what I understand, there was a higher ranking person on the ground. So he takes a fire team and goes into the woods away from mission op, and he's got no comms. No NCO is going to take a fire team into correct me if I'm wrong, Don, because you've been in the heat, but you're not going to go into there without some kind of comms, because if you get in trouble like you just did, nobody gets on the radio and go, hey, we got problems here. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So you're telling me that you heard that he didn't have any comms?
That's
Yeah,
what
you played several months ago, Martin. You played a what the hell was it? A symposium or something where this guy was giving his story.
Oh, it was the Greer UFO whistleblower symposium.
Yeah.
It
right there's your first problem.
I know, but all right.
Okay.
We can. This is really good crossfire stuff right here.
Be that as it may, okay. Immediately upon this guy getting done, all right, Chris, Cobra, and myself critiqued this because we all have military experience. All right. Does this sound logical? Does that sound? Chris picked up on the fact that they didn't have any comms. Okay. According to what this guy said, first and foremost, bullshit. Okay. They would have comms. Secondly, okay.
Welcome
they're
to
out.
Crossfire,
Darcy. They're ready to get into it if it happens.
Crossfire, Mark.
And they're confronted by unknown entities that have automatic weapons pointing at them. Okay. Now, what is a combat team going to do? Chances are somebody is going to go rock and roll on their ass, and they're going to have a firefight right there. All right. Now, what this guy was saying, and I'm thinking to myself, and I know Chris was, and I know Cobra was, there's something here that is smelling real bad from Denmark. All right.
Well, okay.
Martin,
right.
I'm not saying he's lying. I'm saying the story is suspicious because I've been a Marine sergeant, I've been an NCO, I had fire teams, I've commanded people, and I don't have my people go take a dump without a radio, somewhere, because I mean it when you're going into areas that are hostile, you got to be able to communicate, and just tactics. I mean, you put a guy out point. It's called a point, and the guy goes way out before that, and you have your fire team either in a diamond shape or some kind of shape that you're not going to get caught in that type of situation.
All right, I'm going to text Mike right now, and just ask him if there were no comms where he was. But let's continue. But I'm going to. We should get back to Darcy. Poor Darcy's hanging there.
No, I'm happy to talk about this. I'm not 100% sure on Michael Herrera either. I don't want to disparage any former serviceman of the United States or any country. I think what he was doing over there was a great thing for his country and for Indonesia.
Yeah.
But I get a little concerned when I see this new whistleblower wave of people coming forward that make claims that are just completely unverifiable, right? And like part of my job as a documentarian is to try and verify claims, to try and put facts and information to support visuals of UFOs or testimony of people that have witnessed them, that type of thing, right?
Well,
So,
not to jump too far into the past, but we're in the same town, but a different street. I saw exactly the same thing happen in about 83, 84, when the Vietnam Wall went up in Washington, D.C. Now, when I came home from Vietnam in 1972, after getting out of the hospital, I was in for damn near 6 months, all right, after I was wounded. I came home. The first thing I encountered, I ran into a guy that I knew from high school that I had played football with, and he spit on me because I was just back from Vietnam. Now, I don't talk about that very much because it still gets me deep in my chest, but I know what those guys were coming back from. But after 83, 84, the wall goes up. Suddenly, my God, we were overrun with ex-Green Berets, ex-Navy SEALs, with all these tales of daring do that happened in Southeast Asia, okay? It was bullshit. And all the vets I know that went through that will tell you, yeah, oh yeah, I saw that. And even today, 2024, you've got guys running around claiming they were SEALs or they were Delta Force or they were this or that. I wrote a paper on a guy in the UFO field. All right. I'm not going to mention his name now because I haven't had any contact with him for years, that told me on my radio show he was SOG. Do you know what SOG is?
SOG.
It stood for Studies and Observation Group. And this guy had just been busted for academic fraud, okay, claiming he had a PhD when he didn't. A UFO guy, very well known. And I thought to myself, well, hey, I'm a medically retired criminal investigator. This guy told me he was Special Forces, SOG. I'm going to check him out. So I made some contacts in the SF community, okay, here throughout the Western United States. They did a background on this guy. Nobody ever heard of him. Plus, he was too damned young to have even been in SF. So this is fraud that has always gone on. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry to get on a rant, but it pisses me off.
Yeah, I mean, like, this is a really important point. Stolen valor has gone on for decades. And if it's not happening in the UFO field, it's happening, in politics. You've got people pretending they did service in the fucking Navy. And what was it George Bush Jr. Used stolen valor? No, who was it?
No. Bush. Okay, now a lot of things about Bush. All right, would I want to have dinner with him? No, I wouldn't. But on the other hand, the guy did serve. All right, he was in the Guard. All right, he was in the Air Guard. He did serve.
Okay,
but there was a Democratic senator up in, I believe it was Connecticut. What the hell was his name? No, not Joe Lieberman. No. This guy, I almost said Dick Durbin, but I don't think it was Durbin, that claimed he was in Vietnam during the war. The guy had not been in Vietnam. He was busted big time.
That's right.
And so even freaking U.S. senators are lying sacks of shit.
Yeah, stolen valor is a thing. It's bullshit, and it should be called out. With Michael Herrera and some of these new whistleblowers, there's, people need to question everything they're saying. And, Jason Sands is new. I mentioned
Sands before. Yeah,
I got to ask him a few questions when he made his debut on the Twitter space a couple weekends ago. Look, this is something I've said before, and I'll say it again. Since David Grush came forward, which we can verify his background, he's the real deal. It has created a new wave of, I think, wannabe whistleblowers. And it's really dangerous because it's going to allow important ideas in ufology and the phenomenon to turn into a circus. And
Not to
become
mention, this is a burgeoning age of brand new AI technology. Oh my God.
Well, you know, one thing
Not really done.
one thing I don't know if any of you know is Mike Herrera did testify to the government, did testify to AARO for over 4 hours. So, I mean, he did go through that process. It's not like he's just out there willy-nilly talking
But
about
isn't Kirkpatrick saying none of those guys ever showed up?
No, Kirkpatrick said that they showed up, some of them, but the problem with that, Martin, is that anybody could show up to Arrow.
No,
anybody
had,
could testify. Like there's a guy that's been doing the whole MH370 UFO video beat for a little while, named Ashton Forbes. He said he testified to Arrow. Do you know what I mean? So it's like everybody was coming that want, and that if that's a bar of authenticity or credibility, it's low because anybody can go to the show. You know, anybody who wants to say in the future, I'm credible, they can just say, well, I went and sat down with this Kirkpatrick guy and talked to him for 4 hours, you know?
That's right.
But Darcy,
it's something to give them some credibility. They want to build their backstory. That's something to add to their legend. Well, I testified to Arrow.
well, he also testified to Congress.
I don't know. I don't know.
That's fine. I mean, I don't discount. I'm just saying that Arrow is not necessarily the bar that should be the most credible to hold somebody's story true. But
I don't think Congress is the bar either with their cockamamie stories that you hear. I can't get this picture any bigger because we don't have a computer that can show this picture better. Come on.
All right, I think we better
like with a cloth.
We better get back on track here. So I'd like to, Darcy, can you give us a story behind this NASA video you sent
Well,
me?
before you do, let me ask Darcy one question.
No.
Are you familiar with Santa Monica, offshore Santa Monica, Darcy?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. All right. That's something we should discuss a little bit further into the show.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So Darcy,
I have a question.
little backstory for the clip, if you would, Darcy.
Okay, I'll introduce this clip. So this comes from a documentary I put together called Secret Space UFOs Fast Walkers, where I profile everything that happened after the Apollo missions ended. So late 70s to the mid 2000s, like 2009, 2010, because that's when the STS missions really finished. It's all space-based UFO sightings. And the reason why I like the NASA camera footage for space-based sightings, and Mark has looked at some of this stuff with his analysis on Proof Is Out There. We've talked about it actually in person. But some of this footage is important to understand because it's not a footage source that's tampered with. So if I'm submitting footage to YouTube, I could do anything with it. I could make it computer generated imagery. It could be 3D. I could get it onto a popular YouTube platform like, influencers page, like Third Phase of Moon. And they could say, what is this, guys? Is it real or whatever? And it becomes a famous UFO clip. But with NASA footage, it's being shot on space cameras that are being operated by a ground control source, a CATO operator. And they're usually in Houston. And they're usually coordinating with the astronauts that are either floating around on the shuttle or are on the ISS, the International Space Station, to discuss what's being recorded in the camera. And with this incident, it comes from STS-114, I think. I think it's STS-115. And STS-115 was rife with UFO sightings, basically. So you'll see this one that I go through the communication that seems to be very cryptic and almost like a code that the astronauts on the craft are speaking in, so that they can't say exactly what they're looking at. So I'll give you an example. Right now I'm looking at a ceramic white cup, but instead of saying I'm looking at a ceramic white UFO, I say, there's an object outside the window, and it's illuminating a white but definitely not rigid surface that seems to be definitely not a structure, but it is some kind of vessel outside of this window. And when you hear them speaking like this, it allows them in the future to debunk that they ever said they were tracking a UFO. And because they said it's definitely not, but they did say it was a white or this or that, you get some of the description of it, but you don't get exactly what it is. And I think NASA, in my opinion, Mark, has been tracking UFO activity with their space cameras for decades. I think that they speak in code to keep the public from ever having the truth on what they're capturing. And this case, which is like really strange, there's a clip that comes after it in my documentary. Stephen Piper, who's one of the astronauts that was on that mission, she did a post-mission press conference interview. And guys like Chris Hadfield and all this stuff were on stage with her. And the audience was asking her about the mission. They couldn't even re-enter into the Earth's atmosphere when they wanted to land the shuttle from the 115 mission because a UFO blocked their pathway. That's how much UFO activity happened on this mission. And so you're going to watch this clip. You let me know what you think, but this is just the starting of it, the tip of the iceberg, so to speak.
Go ahead. The best view we got was through the binoculars, and the best way I can describe it is there's some kind of reflective cloth or with a metallic-looking type of cloth of a structure that's definitely not rigid, or it's not a solid metal structure. It started over window 8, then quickly moved towards the nose of the orbiter, and we tracked it through windows 1, 2, 3, 4, and now it's out about window 5. It's moving away. Just pass off the nose again. Right now it's at about 12:30 and it's passing out in front of the vehicle.
We're Tally Ho. Can you get a still imagery if you can, and any estimate on size or range?
Digital downline.
We do see that.
Okay. That's looking out in front of the orbiter.
Okay, we're seeing 3 or 4 objects. Can you confirm that it's just the one that's actually moving? The other ones are just reflections?
No, there are 3 objects. The one you see 2 rings right there. They're the ones we kind of had the late tally-ho on. The one down the bottom, that was the one we initially saw.
Pretty cool, huh?
Pretty cool. So directly after that, weird encounter where they're tracking something in a triangular formation, and they tracked it through multiple windows on the shuttle. Actually, the second view you'll notice was actually coming from inside of the bay, because those shuttles used to have this opening. They would deploy satellites or parts for the parts for the ISS, different compartments if they were upgrading it, new solar panels, whatever. That was open, and you could see at the other end of the shuttle 2 other windows. And the camera that's being used to track that is usually a camera that actually sits exposed to space. So to like negative, minus whatever degrees that space is. And they're pretty robust cameras meant to withstand these harsh conditions. And it's actually being remotely operated to track a UFO. And then, like I said, after that mission, they had trouble re-entering. They had to scrub their re-entry because of a UFO blocking the way. You can find the article on space.com. It was a real thing. And Stephen Piper, that pilot, she fainted on stage when they talked to her about this incident. So something weird.
She fainted?
Yeah, there's a video of it. You can look up. What's her name is like really long.
Well, that's all right. Maybe you can send it to me during break or whatever.
Yeah.
Darcy, I have a question for you.
And I want to add 2 when you get done.
Sure. Question I have for you is, first of all, I'm really fascinated with your work. I thought you'd done some great work. I'm looking at some of it. But I saw in your trailer that you had a photo of what I believe is a TR-3B coming out of the water. Is that correct?
You're thinking of the new one with Mark. That's the
triangle in your trailer, right?
Yeah,
in your
Transmedium.
Is that supposed to be a TR-3B?
No, that's just supposed to be a triangular craft, because I was talking about a widely circulated intelligence document that was going around in 2019, in which, what was reported, apparently Bob McGuire saw the actual photo of this object. They scrambled an F-18 fighter jet to intercept an object coming out of the ocean. And the pilot took 3 photos. He took one of it just coming out of the ocean as he was going over top. And then it quickly rose out and went over top of him. And he took a photo from below, and you could see one bright circular light on each corner. But yeah, that documentary is talking about transmedium phenomenon.
Only because that caught my eye, because you did a probably I dying to see it. A Secret Space UFOs, the rise of the TR-3B.
Yeah, I did do that too, which is just
right. And I'm wondering, because from what I see in the description, it says that we reverse engineered the TR-3B is possibly a reverse engineered. So I'm wondering if some of these things that are USOs may be reverse engineered too.
Totally. I mean, like there's no, like, look, if there's a possibility that we have ARVs, alien reproduction vehicles,
do you believe that?
I don't think there's enough evidence that we do have that. Everybody wants to believe everything we see in the sky is alien, but I think I think it's very possible that half of this stuff could be just deeply black, clandestine technology.
Can I add something to what you were saying about?
Yeah, just keep in mind we got about 3 minutes to break. Yep.
Sure. With the loss of the Columbia, okay, that was 2003. When they resumed flights on STS-114 in 2005.
It was STS-115 that this happened. That was in 2006.
I know. I'm getting there. But on 114, what they started doing was surveys, and they were hyper conscious of the potential damage to the outside of the shuttle. So every time they were in orbit, they did a survey of the ship, and every single flake or anything, they would look at it and try to identify it and make sure it wasn't part of the shuttle. And with 115, they did the same thing. So it's important to keep in mind that the footage we're seeing can also be related to that activity, which was on every subsequent shuttle mission. You just don't get to see it because, it's mundane. What is that flake? Well, do you get any photos of it? Because we have to go with our engineers and make sure it isn't part of the shuttle, because they don't have cameras to look around the front of the shuttle. They didn't have that. The only alternative was to go out and spacewalk. So
they did have windows at the front of the shuttle. In fact, if you look at that footage at the starting of it, right? Maybe Martin, you can play that. They literally are saying to Capcom that they're tracking this object through those front of shuttle windows.
That's
they
correct.
say that they saw the object originally in window 1, tracked it going through 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 8, which was above. That's the top window. They have
the
2
windshield, the front windows. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is the front. That's how the front of the shuttle doesn't have the space cameras, but the pilots or the astronauts, they actually have access to high-res DSLRs that are mounted inside of the shuttle that they can pull and take video pictures of whatever anomalies or phenomenon that they're witnessing.
The Canadarm also has a camera on it as well.
Yeah,
I'm just saying that starting with 114, just before 115, they were hyper sensitive to the loss of another shuttle, so they were checking every single thing floating outside the shuttle. So
I'm sure
we have to be careful about confusing that, and maybe I don't know, when they say they're tracking it, because the shuttle shed debris every time it went into orbit. It was shedding like Pigpen and Peanuts. Remember Charlie Brown? Okay, this debris would just shed off it because it comes up from the ground, and once they're in orbit, that stuff, after it just leaves the shuttle, it floats around, and of course the RCS, reaction control system, would move the shuttle a little bit, and then those particles seem to move away from the shuttle. Actually, the shuttle's moving away from them, that kind of thing. So whenever they're moving, those particles would stay right around the shuttle, but if they move the shuttle a little, those particles might look like they're moving elsewhere. So space is a three-dimensional environment. There's no up or down. So they, if they rotate a little bit, it's going to change the orientation. I'm not trying to say that what you captured or what you're talking about isn't, genuine. It may very well be. I'm just throwing a caution in there that after starting with STS-114, the return to flight mission, they were very hyper conscious of anything floating outside the shuttle because they don't want to miss something that could have damaged it.
All right, we got to go to break. When we come back, we'll see the collapsed astronaut. And we're back. Welcome back, everyone. So, Darcy, you mentioned the shuttle astronaut collapsed during, and we get that video. So, can you set this up? This was during a questioning about this? You're muted, Darcy. You got to unmute your mic.
Sorry, bud. Yeah, it was a welcome home press conference for the mission astronauts. And so Heidi Marie was doing a Stephenson Piper is her name. Heidi Marie Stephenson Piper. Longest, most.
Well, that's a name.
Yeah. She was doing, her thing, just talking about the mission. And she fainted. Later on, the NASA press team did a conference to say that the object that blocked their re-entry was a piece of plastic that held the silica tiles on the shuttle that was about this big. But if you look at the video, there's actually video of the object that was blocking their re-entry. It was a massive orb. So it didn't make any sense. What they were describing was the object was something super prosaic. So
Darcy, NASA stands for never a straight answer.
Right. Famously coined by Stanton Friedman.
Here it goes. I believe. I'll try
And
it.
when I finally got to go out the door, that was something different too. And I figured that would never happen without the preparation we had training the team. And so I'd like
Looks like she let herself get dehydrated.
But that's brutal to watch. Feel really bad for her. I mean, I imagine how much trauma, these people have when they're, I mean, they had just gotten out of the craft, or what was the situation, Darcy?
Well, yeah, they were just landed on the ground. And it could be the fact that her body was reacclimating to Earth's gravity and her head wasn't getting all the blood it needed. But it certainly seems strange as soon as she talked about doing an EVA, basically getting out of the spacecraft and doing a extravehicular activity, she just spaced out, so to speak. And
yeah, I saw that.
It's pretty weird. And there's conspiracy theorists out there that believes that a lot of astronauts see this phenomenon, have witnessed it on their missions, and they are either scared or threatened never to talk about that stuff to the public. And some people, like my friend Mike Barra, he believes that some of them are like hypnotized and told not, they can't talk about this stuff. And it's almost like a mental block that they have, and they can't even talk about what they saw out there. So, not everybody gets to escape the Earth's atmosphere. And I think there's a lot of mystery and intrigue there. And I wonder if the UFO phenomenon is something they have as a cover up in NASA's position, especially given what they've done over the past 2 years. They jumped on the debunker bandwagon. They called the Go Fast UFO video an object only traveling no more than 40 miles per hour. I know, Mark, you did your own analysis.
I found it going up like 175 miles an hour when I did my analysis, but I didn't know how far above the water it actually was. So I was basing it on the distance away from the water. So I think 40 is way too low, though.
Yeah, I think it was just a way for them to debunk. But at the end of the day, what is flying in the middle of the oceans that is shaped like an orb or, disc shape that has no traditional flight surfaces and is in the middle of Navy testing grounds? Like Tim Gallaudet's testimony on that UAP video is that he saw it 2 years before it was leaked to the public when he was
in that email. Yeah,
in an email thread about it being a safety of flight risk, because they were seeing all of these types of objects flying in the same area off the coast of Virginia that Ryan Graves witnessed this cube within a sphere object, right? So I think NASA is like the new Condon report. It's just like a scientific authority that's come forward to slam dunk. There's nothing to see here.
You know what, Darcy? I'd like to think that maybe NASA is just in over their head and they don't know what's out there. And if you think about the Navy, okay, and Tim Gallaudet will tell you this, the Navy, their task is to just observe and report now. They can't catch it. It's made no offensive gestures in any way. So they have to just observe and report because they can't catch it. They can't catch these things underwater. I don't think they ever could, because they travel in a way that's very, very, very different from our conventional travel.
What do you think of Jack Sarfati? he reached out to me after watching some of the Transmedium doc and said that there have been Navy engagements with these that were aggressive from the USO side.
All you have to do is ask him for some evidence. I mean,
yeah,
well,
I did.
What came?
Was Navy.
I suppose
Pardon?
the video will show up tomorrow. Yeah,
Nah,
I don't.
he told me that it was classified and he can't actually.
And how would he know it?
I guess he was saying he was read into it, but I'm asking you, what do you think of Jack Sarfati? I'm not saying
I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical. That's my take. Same thing with Jeremy Corbell saying that there was evidence of this jellyfish UFO racing out of the water at high speed and going off at a high angle, but he can't show that because it's classified. Jeremy Corbell would never have known that in this arena. He would never have gotten anyone to tell him that because he doesn't have a clearance. And if he had, he was talking about it.
He was claiming that there was a longer version of that video where it showed that at the end, I believe.
Yeah.
But where is it?
Never surfaced. And
so that would be the testimony that he heard from the person who leaked it to him, that they saw the fuller version of the jellyfish video. So it's kind of like secondhand testimony. But for the version that we saw that Jeremy leaked, we do see this object that seems pretty strange. Not visible to the ground crews, not visible to the pilot, but visible in FLIR, which is a common UFO or UAP phenomenon, that they're almost like cloaked within the normal visual spectrum.
Well, see, that object, I hate to say it, Darcy, I love your work, okay? But, I did with a FLIR scientist, we actually analyzed the jellyfish to death. And Jeremy was not very happy when we announced it was actually a bunch of balloons. And we were able to see the FLIR response from each different type of balloon. There were Mylar balloons at the top, latex in the center, and Mylar at the bottom. And the latex have a different type of reflection of infrared energy that the FLIR picked up. The balloon cluster was also at 1,800 feet. It's no mystery no one saw it from the ground. And that's the other thing. And there were buildings blocking a lot of the vantage points from the ground. So that's not the mystery. There was another guy that Jeremy doesn't talk about on that base who also said he saw it. He actually did see it. And he saw it disappear slowly into the distance until he couldn't see it anymore. It didn't do anything fancy or anything. And he basically thought he didn't know what it was. He figured it had to be some type of drone or balloons as well. So, we have to, I think, temper these things, especially when you hear stuff from Jeremy Corbell, and say we got to be careful. We got to be careful because it's not always the case. I don't know. I just think it's probably what David Mason, FLIR scientist, and I had deduced independently that these were a cluster of balloons.
Did you ever speak with Dave Falch about that, who's also a FLIR scientist?
I didn't speak with Dave Falch, but I did. Dave Mason is actually an inventor and technology creator. He's been on Skinwalker Ranch and devised technology for them. Martin knows him too.
Yep.
He's a really, really smart guy. And when we get on the phone, it's never less than 3 hours. Because he's got so much to say. We're always brainstorming about new ideas and new things to catch these things doing what we can't see now.
The only reason I bring up Dave Falch, who's another FLIR scientist, he tends to have a differing opinion on that object. He seems to think it wasn't balloon because if you go to, actually you can go, Martin, I think you can go to your to YouTube. I can send you that link. I'll send it to you. But Dave did an analysis with a similar FLIR camera system. I think it's called an MX15, and he shows what a Mylar balloon and a latex balloon looks like in this military grade FLIR. and he says the jellyfish doesn't seem to exhibit that. But yeah, I definitely want to see your analysis too. But
Yeah.
here's
That's easy.
all right, here I'll drop this guy's link, and
All right.
I'd love to see your critique on that.
Here's a question from Bill. What are the locations with the highest reports or sightings of USOs, for example, Puerto Rico?
Aguadilla seems to be a pretty prevalent area that the UAPs are seen. USOs. You also have a place called Vieques, which is an island off the east. And there's also a naval, old retired naval base that's near there that they've seen a lot of UFOs. Aguada, which is another place near Aguadilla. There's been tons of UFO and USO sightings there in Puerto Rico. Yeah, Puerto Rico seems to be a hotbed. No,
So what about Aguadilla?
Yeah, there was
that particular UFO that the SCU worked on for all that time, Aguadilla.
Yeah, it's from 2013.
And what do you think about that, Darcy and Mark, both you guys?
Well, it's going to be featured in my next documentary.
Uh,
But I'll say that seems to be a home run. To me, that's not a balloon. That's not a conventional craft or drone of any kind. That is 100% something anomalous. And I believe that the proof is out there. Even did like 2 shows on that because they think it's such an interesting video. But I have all kinds of details and information about that video that people do not know and have not heard testimony about before, which I'm going to bring forward in my next documentary.
You're right about Aguadilla being done by proof, and the producers asked me to do the analysis, and I said, I'm not going to, and I'll tell you why. Because everyone in the SCU are friends of mine, and I don't want. I mean, I was initially asked way in the beginning to be part of the analysis team, and I gave my analysis of it, and they discounted it and didn't use it, and I did not want to go head to head with them. They're all good friends of mine. So I wasn't gonna put myself out there as some kind of, obtuse person there. I have my own ideas about it, and so I let it go with that. I don't have a problem with that.
All right, I'm trying to pull it up, the video of it up. I'm just not able to get to it right now. But
While
yeah,
you're pulling the
Go ahead.
video, Darcy, I'd like to ask you a question. We've seen reports, and I can't substantiate them, but we've seen reports of crafts hovering over the water and sucking up water. Have you studied any of that, or what can you tell us about the craft? I mean, Lou Elizondo once said that hydrogen was playing a big part into their propulsion system. I don't know how he knows that, but that's what I believe he said. But it makes sense if they're bringing water up, they can extract hydrogen from it.
Yeah, undoubtedly. Or is he talking about hydrogen, like the nuclear fuel? Because that was also, you can make a bomb out of plutonium or a hydrogen ingot, right? So,
well, if they much more advanced in fusion than us, but have you gotten reports of USOs, sucking up water, a great amount of water?
there's a famous video of what looks like a water spout, like a little ocean-based or a sea-based tornado, that at the top of that you see a UFO. And it's from Italy. I think I can find the footage of that. But if you have this Dave Fulch FLIR system expert review of the jellyfish, I'd love to have you.
All
guys
right, let me see if I can get that. Okay, yes, it is ready. And Mark, just quickly before we run that, didn't you say last week that there is an excess of water in the universe, that anyone can tap into water anywhere throughout the Kuiper Belt, etc.
Yeah, alien beings wouldn't be interested in like depleting our resources. There's way more resources than the entire Earth has within our solar system, so it wouldn't come here for that. But I will say this though, you know, many of you, some of you know about the talk I've been doing around the country, which is on propulsion. I'm going to do it at Contact, Darcy, and it's propulsion systems, which in my view, UFOs don't have engines. They don't need them. In fact, when we look at UFOs, we're talking about these guys, right? We're talking about saucers. The reason that they're round like this is because they're particle accelerators. And they accelerate protons to a very high rate of speed, and they create particles that envelop the object and pull it into a fifth dimension. This is based on string theory. Yeah, exactly. Martin has that ready to go every single time.
The fifth dimension.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He never gets tired of that. But that fifth dimension is where I think they actually travel. It's actually the only way they could be here from a long distance, because what they do is they go from point A to point B without traveling the line between A to B. They just punch out of our 4 dimensions, go into the fifth dimension, and punch in at the new location. That is not just my theory. It's Bob Schroeder's theory, a good friend of mine. It's physicist theory. It's actually something CERN is investigating right now with one of the detectors on the Large Hadron Collider called Atlas. And they're actually looking for these particular gravitons, which are called Kaluza-Klein gravitons, KK particles. And so, a fusion reactor. Huh?
We talked about this in Transmedium.
I
presented that theory.
That's right.
With you.
Yeah. But I don't know if we mentioned that. Well, I think we did. Lawrence Livermore has made some really good strides. This is for everybody listening, and that is that they managed to make a sustained fusion reaction for the first time in human history. Now, it didn't get more energy out than it put in, so it wasn't that good. We've talked about that, but it was a milestone. And so the fact that they could produce some energy, not as much as they put in, but do it for a period of time, that was the big milestone. And a round UFO that has this shape with a particle accelerators 30 feet in diameter, or so, these guys would have a particle accelerator in their outer ring generating the particles, which would actually suck them into this fifth dimension. That's within the theory. You'd have to see when I do the whole talk. But the other thing is, on the outside ring, when they give off this radiation, this outer radiation, the inner core is safe, but the outer radiation is unshielded. That leaves the whole UFO on the outside. And when you try to keep particles going in a circle, you generate synchrotron radiation. And synchrotron radiation goes out in all directions away from that pipe. The inside can be shielded, but the outside doesn't have to. We always hear when people get near UFOs, they get burns, radiation burns. Where'd that come from? Synchrotron radiation, perhaps. So there's lots of parallels with this idea, the hypothesis, and so forth. And it is just a hypothesis. It's not by any means a fact. But the fact that CERN is trying to look for these particles, and the fact that Lawrence Livermore is working on the fusion reactor that's needed to create these particles, you put those two together, and we could be interstellar in 100 years.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe it's us coming from the future that's looking at this progress. Who knows?
Yeah, right now, time is still considered linear by most people, but I do know at least one scientist I'm on a STEM board with, and he feels that you can go back in time, but only to the extent that this machine he's invented is on. If it's not on, you can't go past the time when it was turned on.
Can you tell us when it's on? Yeah.
Yeah, only when it's on. Yeah.
Okay. All right. You want to you want to run that clip of the jellyfish analysis from who did you say it was again?
Dave Fulch.
Dave Fulch.
His day job is repairing these FLIR systems for
right. I know who. Yeah, I know who he is. Okay, let's roll the tape.
Hey, Dave Fulch here. Today we're going to be talking about the jellyfish UAP FLIR video. From the symbology, I can tell that this is a Westcam system, and the collective thought it's probably some version of an MX-20 mounted to an aerostat, which is tethered to the ground. Typically, the first thing people think is it must be some kind of dead bug or bird poop on the window. These windows are exposed to a lot of debris and get filthy for sure. However, the infrared optics see through this debris in the front window, and it's usually not an issue. Allow me to explain. There is a wide range of focusing for the infrared optics. When changing magnification, the focus lens is used to focus the scene at a particular focal length. Infrared focal lengths are set far beyond the focal length of the front window. Therefore, the infrared optics effectively see through any debris on the window. Latex balloons are hard to detect with infrared. You might see an outline of the balloon, but they're almost completely see-through. These balloons don't have a significant thermal signature and blend in easily with the terrain. You most likely won't see them at all.
That's for you, Mark. Even when they're overlapped, you can barely see them. See? Where's the balloon? Can't see it in this. Barely visible. There's Mylar.
Mylar balloons, or foil balloons, have a very low emissivity. Emissivity represents a material's ability to emit thermal radiation and is an optical property of matter. These balloons are mostly reflective of thermal radiation, like floating mirrors as I call them.
So that's a cluster of Mylar balloons. You can't see through it, but it would emit all white.
It's common for Mylar balloons to move erratically as they are prone to tumbling and shifting directions with the wind. However, that varies depending on how full the balloon is with helium.
And with the jellyfish, you don't see any tumbling. All objects are still together. Yeah, so just examples of the fact that this thing didn't seem to wobble. If it were a cluster of balloons, there was no tumbling in the wind, and it stayed on one axis while it was traveling through the air at apparently 1800.
Sky lanterns have a distinct thermal signature. The heat that fills them is obvious, yet you can still see the paper in certain angles.
Darcy, you can continue to narrate here for those listening on KGRA radio.
Oh, yeah.
You can
Sorry
even
about
see
that.
the flame flickering inside and puffs of heat exiting the hole.
Yeah, so he's just describing the visuals and thermal properties of what like a Chinese lantern, what it would look like. It's obvious. You can see like paper reflections and stuff in this FLIR demonstration, but that's pretty close up. And if it's in a white hot mode, which the FLIR camera system seems to be in now, because everything around the object is white, then the object that's emitting heat shows up
Drones
black.
are usually recognized by their movements and their propulsion.
And yeah, the heat is denoted by the camera as black. If it's in a black hot mode, then heat is denoted by white. And we're looking at a drone right now in FLIR. And it's emitting white because the propellers generate
Due to balance
heat.
and weight concerns, I think it's safe to rule out the possibility of a drone.
Yeah, and that's what a drone looks like. It obviously looks like an X in the sky. The
Let's
jellyfish
go ahead and
does
take
not.
a look at this system. At first, it kind of resembles a cracked detector. Then the next thing I thought of was a bad pixel cluster. I ruled this out when I saw it moving in reference to the reticle. Dead pixels don't move, nor does the pixel kill, as far as I know.
So Dave's just describing the system and how a crack in the sensor or a dead pixel
Jellyfish
would work.
was manually tracked. Was there a problem with the automatic tracker? Could it not lock on? That's totally plausible, considering the contrast shift of the target. Trackers lock on more easily with high contrast, slow-moving targets. If the contrast of the target shifts, then it breaks lock on.
Right. And so that's another interesting thing about the UAP and the jellyfish video is that throughout the whole video, its contrast shifts back and forth from like dark gray, black, and that's irregular. It's almost like it's
Was it
trying
some other
to break
camera
a law.
anomaly, such as the ghosting that my thermographer picked up on the Sky Lantern video? Not likely. Out of all the different systems that I've worked on, I haven't seen an anomaly like this. Okay, and so what is this thing?
So now we're actually looking at the actual footage.
Besides the
where it
lack
went
of
from
movement in
black-
the XYZ axis, the auto gain level that the object does itself is intriguing. It's almost as if it's adapting or sampling. It doesn't seem to be directly reflecting the surrounding environment.
Right. So as it shifts from black to almost translucent
So, if I had to
to
guess,
gray.
I would say this is an unknown black DARPA project that was tested with our current systems for research and development.
And there you go. He's not saying it's alien.
Thanks
He's
for watching
saying
my
it's-
video. We'll see you next time.
Dave was declaring it to be something like a black project object. And one of the things that I've talked to him over the phone multiple times now. He's a really good guy, very based, scientific in his approach, and he understands the actual FLIR technology. If you talk to somebody like Mick West, who used to actually deal with Dave Fulch, but they don't talk anymore because he realized Mick was hell-bent on a debunker angle for everything. Mick West doesn't actually understand the camera systems that these UAPs are being caught on. For example, the Tic Tac. Dave Fulch understands that type of FLIR system that was caught on the F-18, right? Gun cam. So
The AT FLIR Raytheon.
yeah. So he understands what they're capable of, and he can rule out if it's an exhaust flare we're looking at from another jet in the sky. Because if you go through his YouTube after this, guys, he shows what it looks like. He shows actually what the exhaust from one of these jets looked like. It doesn't look like a Tic Tac. So I really like that he has this knowledge base that allows you to properly scrutinize this footage. That object, one of the really strange characteristics of UAP is that sometimes it knows it's being targeted, right? And when it's being targeted by FLIR systems like this, it throws off the tracking abilities. It throws off the, ability for the operator to see what's going on. And that's one of the strange things with the Agua Dia footage. This thing that was moving over the airport in Agua Dia seemed to be demonstrating almost like a knowledge that it was being tracked. And at the very end, where it duplicates and shoots off into the ocean, what is that other than some method to throw off its tracking from the observer, right? That's like the ultimate. It basically just says, okay, now there's two of me. Good luck following both of us. And some people might say that's a camera, like a sensor malfunction or, whatever, but it's not. I'm pretty sure sometimes these authentic UAPs have the ability to realize they're being tracked and they do things to throw it off. And he says in the jellyfish video that it almost seems like it's using this auto gain feature to throw off its tracking signature in the FLIR camera system.
I have to tell you, watching it change the color or the brightness, the tonality. I have a fleet of drones, and one of them I modified with a FLIR Tau core, and I have an infrared drone. I recreated Agua Dia, by the way, with my drone, just so you know. And I'm looking for that footage. I got to find it because
I want to see it.
Yeah, because it shows what happened when it was over the water. See, water is a blank gray slate to an infrared sensor. It can't see, and if the balloon is near that same temperature, the sensor doesn't know what's moving and what's water, so it trails. It makes a wake, and so the wake that's generated is artificial. I ran my truck up my driveway, and I'm going to go to the gain thing in a minute. I ran my truck up the driveway with my son driving before he had his license. It was only in the driveway, so it didn't matter. And he drove the truck up the driveway when I was up at 400 feet watching with the drone in infrared. And sure enough, it looked like a cab of a truck was a boat traveling up my driveway, leaving a wake behind it of just muddled and befuddled sensor responses. So it leaves this trail. So we've got to consider that maybe the infrared camera is doing that. I'm familiar with the Westcam systems, actually. But now as far as the gain thing,
they're made in Canada.
Yeah, as far as I'm actually not sure where that one was made. But where you look at the
they're all made in Canada, in Ontario.
Okay. If you look at the gain thing, you have to consider what's in the background behind this jellyfish, because the sensor is automatically changing and normalizing to try and make sure that it represents the object that might be every object in the view. And so if a very, very hot object enters the view, they all change to lower the temperature. So it's more normalized, and it makes a spectrum of values. That's changing moment to moment. So that explains in part, and this David Mason will tell you all about this, because you can see the values change dynamically based on the background that it's passing in front of. And
but it's only passing over like buildings and the ground, which is not much of a. It's all basically the same to the sensors. So what he's saying, what he's saying is that it shouldn't be doing that. It should not be the sensor that's doing that. He's saying that the object is doing that. That's where you guys must disagree, and I'm sure you guys should. I think you guys should talk about that, because, this is a guy who knows these systems. He literally repairs
and that's with Agua Dia. They did the same thing. They talked to, we got a guy that knows the system. It's probably him. Okay, but the fact is, I do believe that the sensor is auto normalizing the view. All my infrared systems do that. I have two, actually, not all. So I have two.
But wouldn't it look the same if it was just a bunch of Mylar balloons to his examples of what a Mylar balloon would look like tumbling and wavering within the wind, if it's a bunch of dangling balloons,
I know,
and it's going against the wind,
oh no,
you would see the same demonstrated physics in the sky as all the examples he's providing prior to the jellyfish video.
it was going with the wind. It wasn't going against the wind. Okay, because the winds aloft at 1,800 feet are not the winds on the ground, and the winds at 1,800 are different from the winds at 2,500. So,
but you would still see tumbling and all kinds of interactions aloft.
No, actually, I'll tell you. Okay, one of the problems that I had was the fact that people would say that you should see tumbling. I've been investigating and done analysis of balloons for decades, and one of the things that I've discovered and bared out with experimentation is that once a balloon reaches a particular altitude and starts traveling with the wind, as far as the balloon is concerned, there's no forces acting on it. The string hanging down will hang straight down and not even move, not a bit. How do I know that? I've gone in hot air balloons. When you're flying a hot air balloon, you're flying a different stratified wind layers. When you get into the next wind layer, as you're transitioning into it, oh yeah, you're blowing around everything. But then once you're in it, the wind stops. It's totally calm. You hear nothing. There's no wind passing by your ears. I dropped a piece of paper from the top of the balloon and let go of it, and it just fluttered down to the bottom of the basket. And we're moving 30 miles an hour. It's because the wind and the balloon and us are all moving at the same speed. The balloon doesn't know we're moving.
But that's one single balloon, and your theory is that this is a pile of Mylar balloons? Is that what you're thinking it is?
If it's one balloon or 1,000 balloons, once it's in the air column, they tend to stabilize out their motion because there's nothing acting on them at that point. The wind is acting equally because it's all a solid column. The wind's a big, thick column of air moving like a river. And in that river of air, okay, you can have turbulence. Like if you go over a mountain, you might get some bumps into that or whatever. But over the desert, it was very calm. So this was moving very, very stably with stability across that area. That's my view. And once it's in that air column, it's going to stay stable and locked, and you won't see any motion. Actually, when I saw it, I said, if these are balloons in an air column, I don't expect to see any motion. And I didn't. I mean, it was a short take. I mean, it's only 30 seconds long. It wasn't very long or whatever it was, however long, 3 minutes or whatever. And so when I watched it, I didn't expect it to actually move around a lot because I figured it's in the air column. It's not climbing. Okay. The camera's not panning up or panning down. It's actually just moving, panning because it's in the air column. So,
okay. So you're saying it's blowing. You're saying it's blowing with one stream of air of wind.
It was embedded in the air column.
Okay, so it's kind of locked in the column, and therefore it can't. The other balloons that are part of this jumble can't be disturbed. You're saying
they can be if something comes along like a breeze, a gust of wind from below and enters the airstream. Sure.
Yeah.
But while it's flying, okay, in an air column, a solid air column, it's like it's encased in a clear lucite. Okay, it's all moving at the same speed, so no forces are acting on those balloons to make them change direction or change positions relative to one another. That's how air columns work, and so that's the issue. It's the hot air balloon, phenomena. Hot air balloon exemplifies it. But it works with other balloons. It works with one single latex balloon in the sky. It works with a Mylar balloon. Okay, it works with a cluster of balloons. And I've seen clusters of balloons over the years that were released, and as they're going up, they're going woo, all over the place. But once they get into a stable air column, above ground effect, once they're in that air column, they start moving, they stabilize out, and then they just race across the landscape. It's kind of like the ISS in orbit. It's moving 17,500 miles an hour and has all these gossamer wings, solar panels sticking off of it. If it hit any air whatsoever, it would just rip to pieces, right? But it's in that vacuum right there. A balloon traveling through an air column, no forces are acting on it whatsoever, other than that one big pile of air pushing everything equally. And that's the thing. It's actually comes down to physics, So I understand. These look odd, but I think we have to temper the oddness with an understanding of how Air columns work too. So when it comes to the jellyfish, I am still convinced it's balloons. I think that it's actually, when in looking at the top balloons, I identified crescent moon balloons and I thought what looks like 5-pointed star balloons. And the
It's
bottom,
supposed to be like a birthday, like
Eid
mask,
Mubarak
right?
holiday. And they said, oh, well, that holiday had existed already. It came and went. Yes, it did. So,
Had some floaters. It's possible. It's possible. But
I'm not
I
trying to
don't think
convince you of
I don't.
anything.
Yeah, no, it's very possible. You got me on board with the jellyfish, but not everything is a balloon. I definitely
I don't disagree with that.
Agua Dia is not a balloon. There's no way that's a balloon.
I differ on that, but I differ on that only based on their findings versus mine. I did a parallax study of the object at Agua Dia. They said it was moving at 84 miles an hour against the wind. I found it was moving 25 miles an hour with the wind.
Well, yeah, you have all the heads-up display information on that too.
And
it shows
that's
they're
from the aircraft.
tracking it.
That's from the aircraft. And using that and the objects on the ground that it was passing in front of, I identified all those objects and I drew lines. And I was able to calculate the parallax and thus the location, the exact location of that object relative to the plane. When they said it was over the water, it would have had to have raced miles offshore instantly, but it didn't. It was actually just seen against the far more distant water, but its temperature had already cooled off to the point when it was at altitude where it started to blend in with that blank slate that water creates for infrared.
So
that was my idea.
Yeah. The other thing is that you actually do see it go in the water and it doesn't seem to slow down. It does not seem to slow down. That's where your argument kind of doesn't work for me.
No, that actually is for my argument. If it slowed down, I would be curious. That means something was slowing it down, but it's not. And that's because it's an artifact of the camera. It's a wake. It was still moving at the same speed. Water wasn't slowing it down because it never entered the water. The water was maybe perhaps a mile behind it. See, here's my thought. Okay. And it goes back to the experiment I did. I don't just talk out of the side of my face. I do experiments. And so in my experiment, I saw that my truck coming up the driveway left a wake behind the cab like it wasn't there. That's because the bed of my truck was near the same temperature as the driveway. Mm-hmm. The infrared sensor didn't know the difference. So it tried to construct what it was seeing, but it actually jumbles the pixels because it's in motion and leaves a wake. Right. So when the balloon was seen against the water, it was probably near the temperature of the water, right? And therefore, that started getting jumbled. And it doesn't slow down because it's still in the air. It's just that the wake is being generated because the camera's only seeing thermal energy. It's not seeing the object. It's
the problem, though, with that is that with the testimony I gathered from being on the ground over in Agua Dia there, the objects seem to exhibit certain capabilities that a balloon couldn't. And on top of that, the FLIR tracking system should be able to discern between a balloon, mylar, or latex, just like with the demonstration of the FLIR video you just saw. You would see it as either completely translucent or opaque and shining, and that object's not doing that, Mark. It's definitely not exhibiting a mylar balloon, and it's going against the wind because it's going towards the beach, and the wind comes off of the Agua Dia beach inland. So if it was a balloon, it would be blown the other way, and it's actually not very high in the air. It's not like the jellyfish where you're saying it's probably at like 1,800 feet or whatever in the air. This seems to be pretty low, close to the airport. Then it moves up, goes over a parking garage, then it proceeds to the ocean. And the interesting thing about the testimony I've found, the people that were tracking it said it came from the ocean and then went back. So that doesn't seem to be balloon activity to me. But
it doesn't. We only have the Agua Dia footage, and it was picked up by the plane when it took off with the Westcam system, and they were tracking it.
It wasn't a Westcam system
on the Agua Dia. That's what I was told. It's in the write-up.
It's supposed to be a MX system, which actually it is a Westcam. You're right. You're
Yeah.
right. My bad.
No, no worries. But so
You're right. You're right.
Well, no, that's all right. No, not. I'm trying to, but I just try to get the facts straight, for me.
Yeah.
But the thing that I thought was interesting was when I talked to a number of people on the committee that were analyzing this.
SEU, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Scientific.
We're all
Coalition.
friends. I noticed that it was tumbling. It was clearly tumbling. You could see it tumbling. And when I talked about the hotspot on it, which was the infrared signature reflected from the ground, in my estimation, they said, no, it's a strange advanced vehicle, and we're looking at a mobile exhaust. It's actually the exhaust is able to move around the object as the object's moving. In other words, it got way more fantastic. And I was like, no, I think we're actually seeing something a lot simpler.
Or, can a UAP tumble? Is that a possibility in your mind?
Absolutely, in fact, because in the theory I talked about where these particles come in, these particles create micro black holes around the ship, and they prevent the Earth gravitons from reaching it. And so, therefore, it explains the falling leaf, motion that some people describe UFOs having. So, yes.
Right.
See, so things do match up, and many things don't. No, that's just one thing, though, Darcy.
It's possible. What you just brought up, that the tumbling is exemplary of a balloon, but we do know that these objects that have been verified to show a characteristic of tumbling sometimes, and they're not always balloons. I think some FLIR system operators would know the difference between a balloon or an airplane or an anomalous object, and I think.
You'd like to think so.
Why? I think some of the DHS videos, the Department of Homeland Security leaks and stuff, exemplify UAP, because these objects have been filed away as these, holy shit objects. Like, what the F are these? And the DHS agents are used to seeing, cartel craft or drones or balloons. They know what a parachute with some drugs sitting on the bottom of it
that's right.
looks like, right?
Yeah.
So why would they also categorize a bunch of this footage they've gathered over the years in FLIR as anomalous? And CBP, the Department of Homeland Security, quite famously at the end of 2023 in August, released all their UAP reports. So there's something there, man.
I don't disagree. There's something there. I'm just really hard on the data, and I just think that, listening to the theories, yes, a UAP can tumble, but balloons tumble too when it's going into the air column. So if this thing's rising, I definitely saw it tumbling, and you could definitely see the difference between this thing, the whole floating leaf thing, and what I saw at Aguadilla was I was actually watching a object that was leaving a hot spot behind. It had a hot spot in the same place as it was tumbling, the same place. And so that's when some of the SEU guys said, well, that's the exhaust. Okay, but the exhaust means it's shooting toward the water. But I found it was traveling toward the water at 25 miles an hour. So there was a lot of conflicting data there. And I bowed out of the analysis because, again, they're my friends. And I was very happy to see them do an analysis of the stuff. We differed on our outcome. That's all.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that I'm definitely the only one that's right. Of course, I'm not saying that. I'd love to know what the truth is. But I had a differing opinion.
I think the interesting thing about some of these more interesting UAP videos like the Aguadilla footage is that it's longer. You see the Tic Tac footage, it's a few seconds. You see the Aguadilla footage, it's 4 minutes, right? Yeah. You see the rubber duck footage, it's 40 minutes long. So you get
that too.
You get to see the SCU, a group of scientists, pour through this data, and they have so much footage that they're able to fully analyze, just like you did, the terrain it's going passing by, buildings, cars, all kinds of interesting stuff, and then the beach, right, and back to the ocean. So pretty. I think the SCU guys did a good job. Not saying you didn't, but
I think
just
I just said they did a good job. I agree.
Yeah, I think that the Aguadilla footage is very authentically UAP in my opinion, but yeah, maybe the jellyfish could be balloons. I don't know.
Well, we're talking rubber ducks and jellyfish. What was the deal with the rubber? I remember people talking about the
Was
rubber
that
duck.
Blind Frog Ranch? Was that where the rubber duck footage came from?
No, it was
I love these
over.
names.
It was over Arizona. Blind
Okay.
Frog Ranch isn't where.
Yeah. Okay. I got the rubber duck footage too. I did a preliminary look at it. I didn't actually come to a full conclusion on that. Again, whatever was moving was something that was moving in an air column already, it seemed. So could it have been a pair of Mylar balloons? I don't know. Maybe. Okay. They weren't moving relative to each other.
They did seem to move relative to each other. They actually rotated, but in a geosynchronous lock. That's what's been described. So,
I think I remember seeing that. Yeah.
If they, right, because there's an object that's smaller on the top that kind of looks in the FLIR, it looks like the duck's head, and then there's this kind of like canopied, open, like sort of triangular shaped object or orb underneath the smaller object at the top, and so they seemed to go over the terrain, which was actually over Mexico at the time. But the craft had flown that was tracking it from Arizona. And this was, again, another Customs Border Patrol FLIR camera system. And it seems to be like slowly rotating in this like lock as it goes over the terrain. So
I did notice that. Yeah.
It doesn't seem to be tumbling like a typical balloon would be. Mick West said it was he said it was a balloon. And it's also reflecting white hot. So it didn't have any heat. It was, and it's going against the wind. So kind of strange. Like the speed of it had to be around 120 miles per hour at one point. If it was locked in this column, why would it be moving in this like geosynchronous kind of lock? It was really strange.
Well, what was the speed of the craft that was capturing it? Because that's going to be added to its speed or subtracted to its speed. So we don't know what that.
Yeah, the craft was circling it. And that is a good question. We'd probably have to find that out. But I think, again, given that came from this DHS leak, Department of Homeland Security agent leak, I think they did their due diligence, researching what this was, knowing what to debunk it as, and then they filed it away in, the X files.
Well, I can tell you that this is probably the last time I'm going to be invited to be a co-host on this show.
Why is that, Mark?
Yep, you got that right.
You have less than a minute, Mark, to get this USO encounter in the submarine. I'm just kidding. We have less than a minute.
No, we don't have that time.
I do believe we do. But so let's. But we'll catch that next time. And Mark, you're always invited back. We love you here. So.
No, Chris doesn't. He doesn't want me here. So.
Yeah, he was texting me. Yeah. But anyway, this is what Crossfire is all about. We can disagree.
Well, we were crossfiring with you in the way there. It's like Darcy and me. And Darcy and I are really good friends. So it's not like,
Yeah, we're cool. I appreciate this conversation. This is healthy conversation about
That's
UAP.
Right. Yep, that's right. So we'll be back next week. We plan to be. I think Commander's going to be joining us back then. Darcy, thanks so much. And where can someone quickly find your website?
It's occult, OCCULT journeys.com. And you can just see all my film catalog there. Yeah. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Nice
good luck
to meet you, Don. Chris, good to see you.
All right.
Darcy,
good night,
Darcy. Great work.
See you in a few weeks, Darcy.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, see you in a few. Contact.
All right. Good night, you all. We'll see you next week.